biscuit. That's too big a word. That's like mayonnaise. I mean, that's a bigger word I know.
Hello, everyone, and welcome on into Cover 2, College Football Player Props, powered by Unabated. I'm Thomas Viola, and joining me, as always, the realist, Chris Kay. Chris, not only is it great to be here today, but check out the absolute fire our boy Justin has built us for our new background here. Even sicker, if I turn it off and back on, boom. We even got animation up in here.
It runs the play. Yeah, we got the name a few weeks back, and then we got the animation with the background. I'm excited to see what week 13 is in store. I have no idea what's going to come next, but it's big things, I'm sure.
I think we have to jump the shark. We have to get like Deion Sanders on the show.
We do need to get Kirk Herbstreit or somebody, That's the next step, this evolution of Cover 2.
I do have like tangential connections to Chris Spielman.
That would be cool. He's a Lion guy. I would be all over Chris Spielman.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, no promises here. Hey, I can see what I can do.
Week 13.
But today, Chris, I mean, we have plenty of props that we're going to get to. We're going to be talking, of course, as always, college football. But we have a special extra wrinkle in the package this week, and that is the Grey Cup. Canadian Football League. We've got some Canadian Football League props for you from our own resident CFL expert, Benjamin. And we also have and my favorite stat in all of sports that we get to bring up. An American team has won a Grey Cup more recently than a Canadian team has won a Stanley Cup.
Who is the American team?
I believe it's the Ravens from back before they were the Ravens.
CFL was weird back in the day. There was a combination of, I think, an American team or two, but hopefully Ben's not listening to this, so he doesn't correct us. But I'm probably getting a slack on the side here shortly. But yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was like the Colts or the Stallions or something like that.
Ben hooked me up with maybe one of the cooler CFL stories I had with my friends. Went to Vegas a couple years back for that. The same year the Falcons lost 28-3, we were there for that AFC NFC Championship weekend, and there was some game going on, and maybe it was the Grey Cup, maybe it was whatever. And Ben was like, "Dude, just bet the under. Like, there's gonna be snow and insane wind. Like, there's no way anybody's scoring." And I told people all day on the all weekend on the trip, "You got to bet this under with me." They're like, "You're an idiot." And then of course, like, it wasn't even a sweat. Like, it was no sweat, easy win. Ben hooked it up like he always does. Mm-hmm. Lives on a heater, which is great, at least in the fantasy terms of things.
Jim Robinson pointing at Baltimore Stallions. That's what it was. I knew it was Baltimore, and I knew it was a horse. And I was like, I just had to.
You got there. You got there eventually.
It was the Baltimore Stallions. But one of my favorite anecdotes like that was Jim Robinson defending his Canadian rep here, saying also every NHL franchise is 70% Canadian, so we're not too fussed. Look, I mean, yeah, they just can't deal with the fact that the true north is Las Vegas and hockey in the desert.
I'm not getting into NHL Canadians. I'm not messing with it. I'm impartial, unbiased. I'm here for a good time.
I had a similar story to your Canadian football under. I had a buddy who was in Japan and he was going to a J-League baseball game. And so he texts me at like 2 a.m. my time, which of course I'm up because real DGen hours. And he's like, "Hey, what is the maximum amount of money you can get down on the over on this Japanese baseball game? Like, max out every possible book you have. Just like whatever you can get down, just do it." And I'm like, okay, I could probably get down like a couple grand or something. Like, it's very tough. Like, it's tough. I'm going to be going around maxing out all these different accounts. And he's like, "Just do it." There's 17-mile-an-hour winds blowing out, and the total was 7.5. The second pitch was a home run. we cleared the over in the second inning.
You knew it was good.
The final score was like 24-17. It was absurd.
That's awesome. Yeah, you always get that with the weird, crazy sports. You never get it with like MLB or NBA, obviously, but fun stories.
All right. But Chris, I think that we should get into what we are here for, which is, of course, college football props. We'll go through some of the college football, and then I guess we'll figure out when we put in the Grey Cup, but we will get to some Grey Cup numbers as well, because Ben's got some great props for us here. I am very excited to talk about them as well. But for now, let's get started. Talk to me about where we are going first here, Chris.
Let's look at Houston. Houston is playing Arizona tonight. They've gone back and forth with a couple quarterbacks. Donovan Smith started to start the year, and then Zion Chris has kind of pitched in. He keeps getting banged up. He's played 3 full games the entire season. He's starting tonight, and when he is the quarterback, they have run the ball 69, 80, and 77% of the time, those 3 games. Heavy dosage of run, which means, this under on Zion Chris is not really all that playable at this like 106.5 on FanDuel, what have you. But if you go to the receivers, we pretty much love the under on every single one of them, and the numbers are not very high. So I do think these are good plays. I would caution betting all of them because someone is very likely going to hit, right? So we see like Manjax, really their receiver 2, 28.5 yards. Mekhi Muse, the Georgia transfer, great with like in the return game and runs and some short passes. He technically leads the team in target share, I believe. And then Stephon Johnson's the Oklahoma State transfer that's never really done much in Houston, unfortunately. He had a decent year last year, and then with Chris at quarterback and Donovan Smith being awful, he just hasn't done much. So you see a lot of like good unders here. I would, again, caution every single one. Don't bet every single one of these, but I do think 2 of the 3 are very likely to hit. We do like the under immensely on this because he's probably going to throw for like 105 yards.
Jesus.
I mean, we're talking like 10 to 12 passing attempts, and if you want to hit that little edit so people can see the yardage and stuff like that. I mean, he's going to throw 10 to 12 times. It's pretty much like where he's at. And the only thing that you'd have to worry about is him getting hurt and Donovan Smith playing. But Donovan Smith's awful at throwing the football. So they're going to throw a little bit more with Smith, but he's a bad passer. So I like the unders in this Houston game. They're so run heavy. And this game should be tight. So I think they'll stick to their bread and butter with Chris, and that's the run game.
Good old Army offense there. I mean, well, I don't know that we're going to be talking about that Army Notre Dame game, but I did see one take out there that was, oh man, this Notre Dame pass defense is something, and somebody else was like, yeah, Army's real worried about their pass defense.
Yeah, well, Army's passed it a little bit. That's what's kind of evolved their game, but yeah, that's not what they're here to do. They're here to run the ball. But it is shocking. That's the first thing I thought of when I saw the game logs and started paying attention to Houston was like 10 or 12 passing attempts, 40 running attempts, 54 rushing attempts. It's insane numbers, insane percentages, but they're very run heavy with Chris. Limited sample size, but once you see him play, you'll be like, yeah, I get why he doesn't really throw the ball much.
Not exactly an NFL prospect. Joseph Manjack, shout out to him, known arch rival of Hugh Jackman.
Nice. I was like, where are you going with this one? USC transfer. And he also fought his teammate on the sideline once, or slapped him, one or the other, punched him, something like that a year ago. So he's an interesting fellow. But I think the only other one we like here is this Quali Conley line for Arizona to stick in this game. It looks like the line is down, but I want to say there was a line of around 14 or 15.5 yards. We like the over on it if something does pop up there again. He basically gets 4 targets per game, 83% catch rate. So like 30 out of 36 passes thrown his way, he's catching them. The only problem is the yards per target's fairly low. It's checkdowns and things like that just haven't been super impactful. But yeah, if the Conley line pops up that's in the low to mid teens, I think an over there is like a 10% edge type play.
Mm-hmm. I'm fidgeting around real quick. There we go. I want to zoom in a little more so that everybody can, making sure everybody can see there. All right. So Conley, we're waiting on his lines to come out, but definitely some interest there. Anything in the run game here with these two teams, or do you want to head on?
We can look real quick at the rush yards for Conley. I think they've taken it down for a health or an injury reason. I'm not sure, but not a whole lot there. Those lines are pretty tight. Like even like the Noah Fafita pass line, I think we like the over slightly, like 3-4%. So not a major play there. Friendly reminder that it does not even any more of an edge. Friendly reminder that we really love to stick to over 5% of edges. Looking at the data this past week and just for the full season, I want to say we were something like 760 total positive edges, and like 400, maybe like 400 of them are between 0 and 5%. And we're winning at like a 49% clip. Like those are just, some of them are just obscurely low positive edges. Really stick to the 5% and up where you're seeing around a 10% ROI, which is pretty good. You'll take that. And so I just reiterate it every time, 5% and up. Stick to those, please. And don't hammer 3 Houston under receivers. Be a little bit mindful of that. Like we're releasing Texas, and I was like, I can't release Texas without talking about it because we basically like every single under, which is just it's not gonna win like that. You're gonna have to pick and choose your pieces or your spots. But yeah, that same theory goes for them as well when we get to them.
Yeah, Captain Jack and I talk about it a lot, especially for NBA. It's all about baking in volatility. Like you're baking in correlation when you make all of those bets. So just why, like if you're taking the entire field of unders, well, someone's going over, and you got to do that. So you're taking your chances there, and you just got to be careful with how much correlation you bet in there. Nitish Nima pointing out though, why not bet all unders with smaller unit sizes? I mean, you could, but really you're just still, like
you're doing the same thing. You're just risking less.
Yeah.
If 2 of the 3 win, in theory, you're going to go 2-1. You're going to lose a little bit because like maybe minus 114 or 108 or something like that. And so you still profit a little bit. I guess it's way more relevant in like if you play underdogs, prize picks, things like that. Like those sites in sleeper, you definitely have to be. You can't be hammering multiples of those. I would never bet 2 of the same receiver unders in the same slip, but same premise goes.
Mm-hmm. Also, wow, we are at 1,424 subscribers here. Thank you guys so much. And seriously, keep hitting that subscribe button. We really appreciate it. We love growing the channel. We love growing the show. We love having you all here with us. But right now, Chris, where do we want to go for our second game on the slate?
Let's go from a super run heavy team to a super pass heavy team, North Texas. And we can stay in the pass game. Really, the only edge we see here is Chandler Morris. Quarterback transfer from TCU. He beat out Max Duggan a few years ago, but then they had that incredible championship game run, and but he got hurt early on. I think he got hurt against Colorado, and Duggan never looked back. Morris is incredible at the G5 level. They are going this, like, you're probably looking at this line like, Chris, you're crazy. Why would you say over 345.5? Because they're going to throw it a shit ton. They threw it 38 times, I think, against Army, which is insanely impressive that you could even have that many snaps against Army. The previous 2 games before that, 55 and 61 passing attempts. And they play a UTSA team that's going to throw it around a good bit as well. You see a 310 number on that Owen McCown on quarterback line there for the opponent. And their pass defense is not very good. So Chandler Morris is a true volume play. I mean, almost 29 completions. I don't think we see anything ever close to that, right? So tons of volume here. We could take a look really quickly at the receiving guards to see if anything's popped up since this morning. But, the way that Dalton Carnes goes under is if they stick to like the 40 to 45 targets, attempts. You could do it, but I wouldn't bet Morris over and Carnes under. I would pick one or the other, whatever one you prefer. I would certainly go that route. Carnes is like a 15% target share guy, not necessarily like a super deep threat type of guy. Instead, DT Sheffield is their number 1 guy, mid-20s target percentage. And I've heard a lot of different people that I'm friends with in the industry and just people that I've seen on Twitter that I respect, like the over on DT Sheffield yardage. So 81.5 is a good number. FanDuel's 86.5. That's a tough one right there, but 81.5, yeah, I think that's a good over for a receiver 1 on a team that could throw it 50 times.
Good question here from Michael Zimmerman. It's Owen McCown. That's the son of Josh McCown, right?
That is, yeah. There's a relation. I don't know. I think it's obviously just a son, but I think there's a couple McCowns. I think there was he might be the same one that transferred from Colorado. But
that would make sense.
Relation for sure.
All right. Also, it's official, Chris. We talked about it pre-show. I'm gonna have a heart attack in the middle of it. Stay tuned for our noon NFL stream with Derek Hardy for the NFL props when I have a heart attack live on stream from drinking this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really do energy drinks, so
that's terrible.
Prayers up to you.
We're not getting a Ghost sponsorship anytime soon.
Have you ever had one before?
I've had them before. I usually have the Swedish fish one if I get them, but again, they always give me a heart attack because it's pure caffeine and it's terrible for you.
Dude,
But,
you should never drink something that's Swedish fish flavored. Like,
I mean,
that's a bad first sign.
I am the kind of person who would drink Kool-Aid through a red vine straw. Like, I have a massive sweet tooth.
That is awesome. One other game tonight that we got included is UCLA Washington. So if you want to throw in UCLA there, we get an Ethan Garber's under. So love an under here. We haven't really talked too many unders, I guess, besides the receiving yards there. But Garber's under. This Washington defense is top 3 in yards per attempt and passing yards allowed per game. They struggle a little bit more on the run defense, obviously. And so Garber's, I don't think he's hit this number, but let's see here. 2 games where I'm not hitting the number, nothing crazy, but he is a low 200 type guy, and they're facing maybe the best defense he's going to face all year at Washington. That's a good matchup for the Washington defense. So I think the under here is certainly in play at that 220.5.
Yeah, I think that is I think that's a good idea too. I mean, I'm pretty sure. Did we hit the UCLA? I feel like we were hitting some UCLA unders last week.
We did. Yeah, we did against Iowa. We hit the Garber's under on Iowa as well. Yeah. So, that was a nice one as well to go with. But, if we want to move to the rushing yards, we're avoiding receiving yards for UCLA. We have a little bit of an interest on the 2 running backs in this game. So TJ Harden has a little bit of some slight risk. So this one's a little volatile. They've been wishy-washy with how they use the running backs. Harden came into the year as kind of like the guy, but they never really consistently did that. So there's a little bit of a committee. So this 9% is a little bit more volatile than like the previous ones. There's a little bit more guesswork on the usage. But Jonah Coleman's kind of the opposite. Like, we know he's going to get 17, 18 carries. Like, the usage is fairly consistent. The one negative is UCLA has a really strong run defense and a really bad pass defense. So Coleman, strictly a volume play, whereas Harden, a little bit riskier on the usage, but he gets the better matchup. So pick your poison there. I think both of them are good bets. It's tough, like, I love facing like the 115th ranked defense. I don't love facing like the 17th ranked run defense, but Coleman's volume is 100% there. And they got a little bit of a QB situation that might make them run it a little bit more than usual.
And even if UCLA is selling out to stop the run, as Brett Pagney points out in the chat, you're not expecting Washington to be behind in this game. You're expecting Washington to be a little more in kill the clock mode.
Yeah, I mean, I believe they're the favorites, right? They're pushing to try to be bowl eligible, just like UCLA is. Like, if they go more with like Damon Williams, they've said that Will Rogers is going to start, but there's a reason why there's no Will Rogers line. Like, it is a little bit of a murky situation. He could be benched at halftime. If it's Damon Williams at quarterback, this becomes a better run offense because Damon Williams, a true freshman, he's like he's a smaller, skinnier guy that like is really athletic, really fast. He's gotten some snaps already in each game, but it changes the dynamic of the offense a little bit. So the books aren't going to be putting out a Will Rogers line because of that reason, and I think that fits into like the Coleman overs narrative. We do like all the overs in the receiving yards. I do think both of the quarterbacks have shown enough to be beneficial in the passing game. Jeremiah Hunter's not really anything out there for him, but he's the receiver 3 for them. Kaliki Latu is the tight end. He's gotten some pretty good usage over the full season, like 3, 4, 5 targets type of thing. And then when you look at Boston and Jackson, that's receiver 1, receiver 2. We've had some success on going over when those Boston lines were way too low early in the season. And then we've hit, I think last week we hit an under on Denzel Boston receptions at 5.5. But like I said, this UCLA pass defense is pretty bad. 115th in pass yards per game, 85th in yards per allowed. So like that matchup really does fit to be more pass friendly for Washington.
Chris, this tastes like a melted firecracker, those popsicles.
Melted firecracker. I was hoping you were going to say like melted, chocolate s'more or something like that. But firecracker doesn't really, you're not pitching it for me well.
I'm not trying to pitch it for you. That's why. I mean, this is truth in advertising, not try this thing out. This is a warning, not an advertisement here. But so you're okay playing the Washington receiver overs, even though we're looking at the ground game there and 70 yards for Coleman.
Yeah, I think ultimately the volume is so heavy for Coleman, and there is a strong concentration of targets that get thrown to Jackson, that get thrown to Boston. They really just throw it to the three receivers and Latu, the tight end. And, you look at Latu's number, it's 25.5. You look at Hunter, 22.5. Josh Jackson, 46.5. So these aren't huge numbers. And so I think, these are true 5 to 10% edges. Solid ones, good matchups. The only risk would be if they did go Damon Williams pretty heavy, if they went more run heavy. But that's a lot of ifs. I think it's easy to just kind of go down that route and maybe play yourself out of it. But I think ultimately you got to suspect that Rodgers gets most of the game. They pass well in a good matchup, and they stick it out and hit some overs here for us.
Now, how about Logan Loya here with his under? What are you looking at there? Natish Nima curious in the chat. That one also jumps off the page, obviously.
I would say these. Okay, so I think the UCLA Lions are fairly decent, but they have a bunch of question marks, right? There's Rico Flores is questionable, and I want to say J. Michael Sturdivant's questionable. I don't hate the Loya line. I just personally would avoid the receivers because there are question marks. If Flores is back, he's the receiver one, essentially. That's a great receiver for them back. That's going to cut into overall usage. But it's hard to say, right now, let me look and see what we have technically projected for these guys. So we have Sturdivant limited and Flores limited, and we like the Loya under. So if they don't play, how does that impact Loya? We like the under by Garbers, but I would personally say I'd stay away or steer clear of these UCLA receivers until at least we hear some information on Flores and Sturdivant.
And it's worth pointing out the props that we talk about on the show, the projections that we talk about here. This is not stuff that we're releasing in the college football projections release that we're going to do around 4 p.m. Eastern time today.
Where you can't give trade secrets. It's around 5 p.m. There's a level of release time that matters. But yeah, around 5 p.m. There are, we're going to talk 10, 11 teams, and only 3 of them are being released. Texas, Arizona, and I think Washington. We're not releasing UCLA. We're not releasing North Texas. North Texas has a bunch of weird running back stuff going on. I just would prefer not to see a random running back line pop up and get stung by it. So yeah, there's a reason why we're talking about it on the show. It provides ability to give you context to the situation. It just so happens that Loya's edge is fairly nice at pops for sure.
Exactly. All right. Now, we've already talked a little bit about the rushing market there. Which game do you want to head to next, my friend?
So let's look at Saturday. So let's go to Texas. This is one of those ones I was telling you about that we don't have any issues with injuries. We don't have any issues with question marks, with questionable tags. But there's a lot of, the problem with Texas is they've blown pretty much everybody out. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to say exactly how they're going to play in a game that's a 2-touchdown spread against Arkansas compared to when they beat Florida 100-0. I think it was 35-0 at halftime last week against Florida. One thing I do know is Quinn Ewers is hot. He's playing incredibly well. So this 12% edge on the over here at 283.5, great number. He's got every single one of his receivers is healthy. Only Jonte Cook left, and he was kind of like a backup type guy. Both running backs are great in the passing game. So if you want to go to the receiving yards, so one thing that's interesting with them is I looked this up. 6 different players have led the team in receiving yards in the game. So They mix it up, and it stands kind of true to what we're seeing here. Blue, 34% edge on the over. Wisner, the other running back, 30% edge on the over. They get 4 to 5 targets. Blue leads the team in target share, and he missed a game. So these running backs get a ton of usage, and they're really good in the passing game once they do get the ball in their hands. So those are the 2 overs we like. Wow. We like the unders on the receivers. Golden is a small under. Helm, he's the tight end. We like the under there. Bond and Moore, we like the under. So like we said with Houston, like not all of these, like it's not possible for all these receivers to go under when we think Ewers is going to go like 300 yards. One of these guys is going to pop for like 60, 70 yards, but I think largely as a whole, this receiver group is a strong under. The only risk would be, do they go super concentrated, right? Like if this game gets tight, how does Texas play in a close ball game? Do they go just 2 to 3 receivers, or do they continue to utilize multiple, like 3, 4, 5 guys? I will say the Blue and Wisner are pretty safe in their usage. They rotate 2 running backs. I don't see much risk at all in that one. Whereas the receivers, that's where the volatility, the little bit of risk comes into play because of how we've seen them in so many blowouts, and now we're going to get a potentially close game.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be interesting. It kind of sucks that these games are noon, 9 a.m. Pacific time. Like,
well, did you see that Big Noon Saturday is at Colorado?
Oh,
this week it's at Colorado. Last week was Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 10 a.m. game, local time.
Big Noon Saturday.
Big Noon Saturday is at 10 a.m. local time with Colorado. So yeah, it's these noon games are. It was like a big talk this week about how people hated Big Noon Saturday. I'm like, if they didn't have Big Noon Saturday, like what would we actually watch? There's not really a ton of action at noon. Like all the best games are 3:30 and 7 or 7:30, right? So give me something to play or to watch at noon.
I'm inclined to agree. I will say I would absolutely nail that field goal. Like Pat McAfee, give me the chance. Come on.
You think so?
Oh, 1,000%. When
I worked at the College Football Hall of Fame, we had an indoor turf field, obviously, and I got pretty good at kicking field goals. Yeah. What's the length on the field goal they kick?
I think it's like a 35-yarder.
Yeah, I could do that.
Yeah,
I could do that. It's all about like I could tell when someone's, we worked the field, so people would come and kick the footballs and stuff. I could 100% tell if someone was going to miss, like just because the way they set up, the way they like try to kick the football, you're just like, yeah, this is not going to be pretty. We saw people like tear ACLs and stuff too. Some people should just not be kicking field goals.
Yes, absolutely, and it is hilarious, and that is that's a high pressure kick. It doesn't get much more high pressure.
Yeah, a lot of people. Plus, they're all like tight on you, like a fairway and like a drive in golf. So yeah, but you played soccer. I don't know why I questioned it. Right, you're a soccer guy.
Yeah, I actually there's a flag football league out here, and they actually do field goals in it, and so I was kicking in that league for a little while.
Did you play like receiver and stuff too, or are you just like the kicking specialist?
Yeah, I played receiver and corner too. But I very quickly realized that the problem with adult flag football is that it's not people like you and me playing. It's people who are like, yeah, if I just didn't get my big injury, I would have gone pro.
Dude, I played it 1 year and I was like, I'm never doing this again.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did. I was like, okay, it's fun to come and kick field goals sometimes, but like I'm at corner here and I'm matching up against a dude who I'm fairly confident was Antonio Brown.
Yeah, well, that and the fact that like they tackle. They're not really playing flag football. They're tackling you.
Exactly.
Essentially.
I will say I did get a pick on Antonio Brown though. That was a highlight. Not as highlight as kicking the game-winning field goals, but that was a highlight.
It's a good feeling. Yeah.
All right. So we've covered the receiving market here. We know that Texas likes to use their running backs. Do we want to hit the rushing markets as well?
Yeah, let's look at the rushing market. This is going to show you a pretty good rushing over, I believe, on Wisner. Yeah, that's a strong one. There's a little bit of, I should say, like, I don't want to say volatility in every single one. I like the over regardless. Mm-hmm. There is a chance that we're a little bit high on the Wisner usage, but we like it so much that I feel pretty good about this over. Mm-hmm. Jaden Blue didn't even have a rushing attempt against Georgia a few weeks back, I believe. Like, so they have very much moved in the favor of Wisner as kind of like that lead back. I think he only had 4 or 5 carries last game, but they also, like, if you look back at the game log and the play-by-play of that game against Florida, it was like 4 plays, touchdown, 2 plays, touchdown, 1 80-yard catch, touchdown. Like, there was not really an opportunity for Wisner to get 12 to 15 carries. So we like the over. Even if you want to be a little bit more conservative on the edge, you're looking at like 13 attempts, like 70 yards. Like, it's still a strong over at this 56.5 or at like the 60.5 at FanDuel. So I think those are lines that are really good. And and I just don't see how Blue would overtake Wisner as the lead back after what we've seen between the two of them in the last month.
Yeah, and sure enough, this line is already moving up to 59.
It's just too low. They're going to score a ton of points. I don't know. The only way, maybe, I don't want to say that, knock on wood, right? Like the route to losing is another big blowout, but on the road at Arkansas, I think they beat Ole Miss, didn't they? Like, or they've had, or no, they beat Tennessee. Like they've shown to be capable-ish. So if they go 42-0 at half, then yeah, you might be in trouble. But otherwise, I like the over. Wisner was a guy that caught a 50-yard pass on one target last week. So he has a big play in him too. So it's not even like you have to worry about, him being a plotter or needing heavy volume to hit that number.
Oh, GP36 saying we got a little head-to-head action here. ETR released Wisner as an under.
Oh boy. What's the line movement been on this thing?
Let's check.
I got burned by liking the Blue over a while back, but yeah.
Oh, it's been dropping. Oh man,
this 63 to 50, 60 in 3 days is not a huge. You can tell when there's a bad line. You'll see you see some of these ones like this. Let's go to Baylor. I'll show you a line that was a bad one to start. If you go to the passing game for me, this is the one to focus on the most. Look at where this one started. FanDuel started at 229 on underdog. It was 221.
Jesus.
218 actually. So that's a bad line.
Yeah.
We'll see. Hopefully we nail this Wisner one. Head-to-head battle is fun. That makes it a little bit more exciting tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Sawyer Robertson. What's that?
I just bet it.
Confidence. I love it.
I believe in Chris.
I love that, Tom. This is a guy that he's taken over in the last 5 games. He's seen 40 plus passing attempts twice. He's averaging 35 attempts in those games, and that includes a 19 attempt game against Oklahoma State where they ran for 350 yards. They just pounded him on the ground, and there's no need to pass. So this is the team that really should be throwing it 35 to 40 times. Good matchup against West Virginia. And I want to say he's hit this number 4 or 5 times, 3 or 5 times at the very least. So he's shown to be a guy that's been super productive when given the opportunity. And I don't see why they would just turn to another 40 for 350 on the ground type game. West Virginia is not going to let them do that on the ground. Yeah.
It's going to be more of a passing affair here, as Brett Bagney saying. So you like him to have a good game. It's looking good to me. That's
yeah. If you want to have some fun, right? Every now and then we've talked alt lines, you could ladder Robertson a little bit and maybe go over 300, over 325 even. This is a guy that has a big game in him, and we've seen some volume out of him. So if you have a fun line of I don't know, whatever, plus whatever at over 324 and a half, yeah, I think this is a guy that could hit a huge number in the passing game. Should be a competitive game, and we've seen volume and production in the past, so I think that'd be a fun one to do if you have anything out there.
You know what? Let's quantify that out for people and give them an actual number that they could potentially get here, because we have the Unabated prop simulator, and we can tell you exactly what he should be priced at for those alt lines here. And all I have to do is share this tab instead. Bada bing, bada boom. If you want a 300-plus yard passing game, you're looking for more than plus 171. That sound pretty fair to you, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, we have him at 277, or what have you. So I like that one. Yeah, I think that makes sense. It wouldn't be too hard to get there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can see it here. We got some, if you want plus 325, you should be looking for plus 278.
This is fun, by the way, because we have the simulator to show you your typical bets, right? Mm-hmm. But how many times do you look at a alt line like this on a guy when you're just having a couple beers on a Saturday night watching the game?
Yeah.
And you think a line's good or you think a line is bad, and now we have something to actually quantify it.
Yep. Last a couple weeks ago on in the NFL, I had it wasn't Juwan Jennings, it was the tight end, it was Johnny
Kittle?
Smith.
Oh, Johnny Smith, okay.
And I had his line was at 2.5. They were setting his reception line at 2.5 for a while, and it's now gone up. But I had him all the way up to 5.5. He finished with 6 receptions. And
Nice.
that was a phenomenal ladder play to hit.
Ben hit Quinn Ewers last week, the same type of thing. He did, I think it was like all the way up to like over 330 or something like that. And I think he hit it like 4 or 5-0 on that one. So the passing ones can be fun. The passing numbers in general can be a little bit tough because like blowouts really impact like overs and things like that. But you can see some huge performances out of quarterbacks. And so I thought Sawyer Robertson was a fun one to suggest there.
Yeah, Nitish saying my limits on these alt over yards are like $20 on FanDuel. That's why you got to go to the kiosks, man. You gotta go jam some kiosks if you want to get those numbers in and dodge those limits. I had Sam Darnold 300 plus passing yards last week. He finished with 290.
That's tough. But 300 yard or 290 in like NFL is like 400 in college. I feel like it is a huge difference between the two. I don't say sports, but two levels.
Big time. All right. I mean, look at some of the cartoon numbers that we see on these guys. You got Ashton Ginty lines at like plus, like his number set at 125 rushing yards. It's absurd.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil anything, but we're not as high on Ginty as we were a month ago. He's slowing down. He's slowing down. He's a little banged up. His yards per carry went from like 11 to 7.5. Like how bad? He's awful. His yards per carry is only 7.5. Yeah, it's awful.
He might not get drafted at this rate.
You should just hang him up. Maybe he comes back for another year, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, no, the Boise is going to be included in the release. And fairly sure we like the under. So we've won it before. We're not scared.
Yep.
We're mildly scared. We're not fully scared.
All right. Do we want to head into the receiving market here in this Baylor game?
No, there's those lines there are fairly competitive. Nothing really to see. Let's look at Northwestern and let's go to so we can stay here. Has this line moved? Can you take a look at the line movement on this one if you don't mind?
Totes Magoats.
135.5. I have not seen that one.
So this is Fanatics. The Fanatics line can be a little finicky sometimes. This might not be there.
Gotcha. So to premise on this is a tough one because Northwestern with Jack Lausch at quarterback is basically like against bad teams, he's thrown for like 200 to 240. Against good teams, he's thrown for like 60. So you could bet the under. If that line is there, anything under probably 125-ish, I would say is definitely in play. I mean, we saw what Ohio State did to Hudson Card last week. Will not let that happen again. I was so frustrated watching that game. They just wanted to milk the clock. I was irate. But all that to say is they throw it a ton to the receiver one. So if we want to go to receiving yards here, Bryce Kurtz is out. This is a guy that's like a high 20% type target share. He's out for the game. He's been out a couple weeks now. AJ Henning has been in play the whole season. He's been a viable receiver for them. He's not some random guy. He had 10 targets. I think it was last week and 4 targets the week before that. They just didn't pass a whole lot that week. So he's going to see a ton of targets. I want to say we have him at 4.4 receptions, but if we wanted to take a look at his actual targets projected, 8.8. So you would think it's a tough matchup, right? Ohio State's always produced like great cornerbacks, at least at the college level. This is like a pretty bad cornerback group compared to the previous years. So I like the over on Henning. And we're also talking about a line that's 27.5. It's not like a 60 or 55.5, something like that. So it's completely viable over 27.5 on 8.5 targets, basically. And
it's not like you don't expect this team to pass.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're 4 touchdown underdogs. Like the game script's going to push them that way. The problem with Purdue last week was that they just went insanely slow and they ran it so much. Sometimes the blowout factor doesn't matter. Some teams just try to milk the clock and keep it as close as possible. Like they're just trying to cover the spread. Northwestern isn't necessarily that team. Like they will throw it. They're not going to just try to, run the clock out and kill your overs. This is the only one really I would touch in this Northwestern side with the over on Henning. So 27.5 yards completely in play.
Mm-hmm. He has been a little banged up, as Brett Pagney points out, but who else are they throwing to here on this team?
They don't have a ton of options. With Kurtz out, you pretty much have not related to Calvin Johnson. Calvin Johnson, well, maybe it's related. No, there's no way Calvin Johnson II is related to Calvin Johnson. Is Calvin Johnson old enough to have kids that are in college?
I mean, I don't think so, but guess what I'm looking up now.
We'll take a look at it. Yeah. They don't really have a ton of guys in the pass game. Frank Covey the fourth, like when Kurtz is out, they become pretty thin at receiver. And like I said, he had 10 targets last week and 4 the week before that. So you're just avoiding Lausch becoming like a high school quarterback, which could happen, but I don't see it at that 27.5 line.
Mm-hmm. He can't possibly be because Calvin Johnson is actually Calvin Johnson Jr. So this would be Calvin Johnson third.
So he'd have to be the third.
Yeah.
Nothing gets past us, Tom.
We're sharp.
I think the Ohio State now is the one to play. Last week we said we like 3 bets, all unders on Howard pass under, and then Judkins and Henderson rush unders. Howard under hit, and Henderson under did not hit. He went like 6 for $130. Mm-hmm. So if you want to go to passing yards to start, I think it's the same kind of story. Like I think one of these 3 is likely to go over. They're 28-point favorites. They're going to score mid to high 30s at the very least. But I would imagine 2 of them probably go under. Howard ended on 260. I had in my notes here. Let's see. I think he's only gone over 260. He's only hit 261 3 times at a 9, and he's played similar competition. So it's not like, first time they played a blowout, they're going to be playing in a blowout where they score 40. Of course he's going to go over. No, they've done this every single week. They've played a weaker competition the whole season, essentially. So I like the under here. They do have some big play threats at receiver, but ultimately I think, you're going to see some short fields. You might see a defensive touchdown, and I think that'll help us keep under that 260.5.
Ash Katari checking in with us. How's it going, man? Thank you for joining us. And yeah, it's with this Ohio State team, it is very much they're going to blow teams out, but they're also just going to say, okay, well, it's time to milk the clock, bring in the backups, and run the ball.
Yeah, they'll get Judkins and Henderson some help with James Peoples. They're keeping them fresh. They know what they're here for is they want to be healthy and fresh for the playoff. They're pretty much, I would say they're pretty much locked in. They obviously you have to win your games, but when you're 4 touchdown favorite over Northwestern, I don't think you're worried about, saving a couple snaps on these guys. Ryan Day is notorious for any running back being nicked up, just sitting them, or resting guys early type of thing. If we want to move to the rushing market here, we have big unders on both Henderson and Judkins. They're going to get low usage. You're just hoping they don't hit the big play. Henderson last week, he had a huge game, but it was only on 6 carries, 6 for 85. I said $130, not even close. 6 for 85. He had 3 for 43 through the air. Mm-hmm. So you're really just hoping, okay, I avoid the 40-yard run, because we're looking at 7, 8 rushing attempts. Judkins is going to get more usage. He's been a little bit less productive this season, I think, in yards per carry. And both have been not that impressive on the season, really. Henderson was incredible his freshman year and has kind of weakened the last couple of years. And then Judkins was awesome at Ole Miss. Now he's just staying fresher, lower usage. You wonder if he's one of those running backs that needs like a ton of usage to get him going, like get hit in the first quarter and then like he wakes up type of thing. But yeah, I think the unders make sense here. These are not ones that I'd absolutely hammer, but I think I like these both on their own. I mean, Judkins went 11 for 32 last week, and they won 45-0. So that just kind of shows you. He went 10 for 29 against Nebraska, 11 for 23 against Oregon. That's 3 of the last 4 games. So he's been unimpressive. The run game has been unimpressive. A little bit of weakness is their offensive line getting an injury or two, too. It hasn't helped. Mm-hmm. So.
And also, as Brett points out, game at Wrigley Field. I mean, I get that Northwestern is a third-rate clown college, but going to be
there's a little bit of journalism rivalry, isn't there? Isn't Northwestern a big journalism school?
Big time. The Syracuse Northwestern nerd rivalry is real.
That's you gotta love college football for stuff like that, like just creating rivalries for no reason.
Yes.
But yeah, I think this is the third week. They're the first of 3 weeks where they play a college football game on Wrigley Field. At least, I mean, they've done it for years now, Northwestern, but at least they don't really have a field anymore. They kind of have that that smaller one that they have set up.
That
one's dope. That one's sick.
Yeah, they should just not. They should be like, cool, we have our stadium. You build more stands, do whatever you want, but that is a sick, unique field, and you should totally keep it.
It's pretty dope. I will say in 2 weeks, I wonder what that Wrigley Field is like.
Yeah.
Can it handle 3 weeks of football? Who knows? Maybe it gets sloppy. Maybe you bet an under on that game in the 3rd week. But yeah, it's a cool experience. They're going to sell that thing out. Northwestern in Chicago with Ohio State. I have to imagine the alumni base is huge, and that's kind of why they do it.
Yeah, definitely going to be awesome and understandable as to why they need to pack the house here.
Let's we only have a few left. I think we only really have LSU left. Let's go to LSU for a
That's perfect.
minute.
Because remember, we have the Grey Cup to get to.
We got the Grey Cup to get to. So Garrett Nussmeier over, let's see, hopefully it's still there. Yeah, over on Garrett Nussmeier. Big number, 300. But this is another volume play. I mean, the guy has thrown 38 attempts in 6 straight. He's seen upwards of 51 passes, I should say, in a game. And I mean, we saw what happened with Florida last week, right? Like Quinn Ewers threw for over 300. It was a blowout. Now we get DJ Lagway is healthy. There's a thought that maybe Montreal Johnson's healthy. So like a competitive-ish Florida against an LSU team that wants to throw it 40 plus times. Mm-hmm. You can see why the over makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, should be fun. Very, very sad that we're potentially getting LSU versus Bama in the SEC championship.
Do you think that's possible? I think almost like LSU's toast at this point after they lost.
I mean, maybe I'm operating off of week-old data. I could be wrong.
I think you might be on week-old data because with that loss, there's a ton of teams at 2 losses in the SEC. So I wonder how they would get there, but who knows? Yep. I saw a scenario where it was like, there's like basically 5 SEC teams with 10 wins and 2 losses. Maybe a team or 2 with 11. It's like, who do you keep out type situation. Mm-hmm. So there's a ton of top heavy. I mean, it's like 6 deep that could end 10-2 basically.
It is the height of absurdity that we're talking about a potential 3-loss Georgia team and being like, well, if BYU doesn't win the Big 12 championship game, they're going to be out.
Well, Indiana fans should be scared.
Yeah.
Indiana fans are the ones that need to be scared the most because they haven't played anybody. If they lose to Ohio State, that's their only shot at a good win. And I think people are going to want to see an SEC team and over a 1-loss, maybe 2-loss Big Ten team. Mm-hmm. So
just absolutely ridiculous. All I'm saying is 3-loss Syracuse team. Those are 3 quality losses there. Stanford beat Syracuse. That's a quality win.
Could they get in? Could they get in based on the ACC championship game though?
No, absolutely not.
Are they not in contention? I guess
I don't think so at this point.
Let's see. Yeah, there's 2. They've lost all 3 of them. Were ACC. Yeah, they're out.
Yeah.
But hey, I mean, you're not Virginia Tech, so it could be worse.
Yeah, I'll take 6 and 6 and 3 right now. You told me that we're bowl eligible after 9 weeks in first year Fran Brown. I take
Fran Brown, the guy that doesn't take showers after losses, right?
Yeah.
Talk about motivation. His wife or partner, significant other, what have you, must hate losses.
Dude, thank God that it wasn't Scott Schaefer or Dino Babers with that policy. It would stink.
Yeah, they'd be in real trouble. But I think as a Syracuse fan, you got to be encouraged in that. We've talked about this. Like, what a first year under the belt of Fran Brown.
Mm-hmm. GP36 saying IU needs to cover 14.5. Yeah, I mean, is the playoff committee going to take into account that they cover the spread? We'll see.
I mean, I don't think style points matter for many teams in college football, but I think style points matter for Indiana.
Yeah.
I think he's on point there. I don't think they'll care about the spread, but I think they'll say, damn, they won 42-21. Like they won 42-10. Like they'll say that and be like, okay, yeah, like I can get over the fact that they lost by 10 to Ohio State. Mm-hmm. But if they play every single game and it's like a 3 or 7 point game and they're winning it, and then they lose to Ohio State by 10 or 17,
yeah,
they could be in trouble.
Nitish wants to know, Obear 23.5 completions is -106 on ESPN.
Yeah, this is a volume-heavy offense, not to the level of Chandler Morris, but like this is a team that's going to want to throw 40 times. I personally am a huge fan of Nussmeier as like a pro prospect. He's not like your typical. He's not like a college-only quarterback. He is a true quarterback that should see high draft capital. So I think what you said, 23.5. We have him at 25.8. Yeah, I think it's a good bet.
All right. Do you have anything else that you want to hit in this game, or shall we head to the Great White North?
Let's hit some Grey Cup. If anybody has questions, send them in the chat while we chat about the Grey Cup.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. I'm going to fire up the simulator here because it's not perfect, but it's kind of close. You know
It's
what
as
I'm
close
saying?
as it gets.
Yeah. It works. It works for what we need it to do when it comes to this. But we are going to fire up that simulator here, and we're going to talk about a couple specific props that we want to get to here, and that we start off with Toronto wide receiver Devarius Daniels. Is the Grey Cup the most accurately named trophy in sports column? That's a great point. I think it should be the A Cup.
The A Cup.
A?
Yeah, Devarius Daniels, that guy's been in CFL for a long time. I reckon I was in the CFL streets with Ben like 10 years ago. And my wife will put up with a lot of things. CFL was not one of them.
I understand. I mean, I would have problems with my significant other if I thought they were associating with Canadians. That would be
if they spelled defense wrong.
Yeah, that would be an issue.
Yeah, so Devarius Daniels, receiver, Toronto. Ben has him at 3.4 receptions, 39.5 yards.
Mm-hmm.
This is one that has moved depending on some different books. So this is available at MGM and Sports Interaction at under 54.5.
Yeah.
So
down to 37.5 at Bovada and Bodog already.
Yeah, so this is one that Ben likes. He puts, we're just going to read his notes here. Projected a season-long rate of 15%, even though he had 2 enormous weeks mid-season of over 25% of targets. So you're looking at a guy that needs 6% more target share than his typical average to hit that over, which, I mean, it's creating projections with Ben and myself. Like, that's a pretty steep jump to get to.
I cannot believe that the quarterback for Toronto's name is Nick Arbuckle.
Former Georgia State great.
God, incredible. I need an Arbuckle jersey.
Yeah,
Fatty Arbuckle was something that my for some reason my mom would call people that all the time.
That is an interesting nickname for people. But yeah, I think Arbuckle was in the Georgia State streets for a while there. It's fun to see the guys like play college football, then move on, the Canadians. Rourke, the quarterback for Indiana, if he does not make it in the NFL, he will be highly coveted in the CFL streets.
Chad Martin saying, sorry, was that? Yes, Daniels under 54.5 receiving yards. That is the first one that we've got for you here. Like you said, projected season-long rate of 15%, 2 enormous weeks mid-season. He would need a 21% target share to hit that 54.5 projection. So yeah, be watching out for that 54.5 number that is apparently floating around at MGM/Sports Interaction. And then meanwhile, when we move on to Nick Arbuckle here, Chris, if you want to continue talking about him while I put his
so Ben is touting the over 255.5 passing yards again at MGM and Sports Interaction. This is a guy that projects for 279.5 on 34.5 passing attempts. So he gave you attempts, not completions. So
so I can't simulate it.
Yeah, good luck on that one. So over 255.5 is the play. This was one that was talked about yesterday on the Pat Mayo show, and it moved up on Bodog and Bovada to 272.5. So people hit that one already. But if you have MGM and Sports Interaction available, this is one that, I mean, is 17 yards difference on some of these books. So he also puts almost 10-point underdogs. Toronto's likely going to have to pass a lot more than they'd like to, despite starting their backup quarterback. I think this isn't Chad Kelly on this team? Isn't that the injury that Ben's referencing? Do you remember Chad Kelly? AKA Chad Kelly was the guy that got into some real trouble with, I think, with the law. Yeah, he's on the Argonauts, Toronto Argonauts. So Nick Arbuckle backup. We still like the over.
Could be his Nick Foles moment.
One can only hope.
Yeah. One more wild one here will be Toronto running back Kadeem Carey over 24.5 receiving yards, 7-1 on Bodog Bovada. It's clearly an error, but Ben got down some money anyways. He projects 25 receiving yards, could get a lot of checkdowns playing from behind. So make sure to he's saying not sure we want to tout an error in a misplaced line, but it should be at -110.
I think that's a be careful one, like if you want to maybe sacrifice that account to the sports, the betting gods, that might be a way to do it, but just be wary of that one. But yeah, if you think about it, right, like that's like you should be around minus 110 on something like that. And if he was projected for 25 yards on a 24.5 line, we would probably like the under. The big key here is the fact that it's plus 700. Plus 700, you're loving the over. So
price rules everything around us, and that is what we've got. That's what we've got to wrap up some college football, some Canadian football here. But of course, we want to also remind you: use the promo code Grey Cup for 5 days free on Unabated. Just go to unabated.com/pricing. Click on Start My 5-Day $30 trial on that premium tab, and you can use this promo code to get 5 days free. It'll make your trial free for you there. And for the Canadian football, Nitish, maybe that's a kiosk play. But if you're only throwing down a couple of them, I'm sure that's not going to be a huge deal here. Yeah, if you head to unabated.com/pricing, use the promo code Grey Cup, it'll make your demo free, your trial free. And just for this week, for the Grey Cup, we have moved the Canadian Football Alpha channel in the Discord from concierge level to premium level. So for anyone who is interested in getting down on the Great White North's greatest trophy, you can absolutely do that, and we are here to help you. So all you need to do is be a premium member, not a concierge member.
Yeah, by the way, as someone that follows that channel, I don't partake because I play underdog. We've talked about this. They're like the nicest people on that channel, shockingly. I think that's twofold. I think they've really taken to the CFL Canadian piece of it, and they're just nice. Although I think Ben would argue that most Canadians are not nice. They're just like fake nice. That's another story, another day, probably. But also because Ben kills it. It's like literally he is like the CFL god. It's insane. He's been doing it for so long, and he has reporters in his back pocket that he talks to and people at different teams. It's insane, his levels of connection with the Canadian fan bases and the reporters and stuff like that.
He is out there on those streets. But for now, Chris, it's time for us to hit the streets because I have to go and do the Blitz NFL prop show with Derek Carty. So stick around right here on this channel or check out the links on either Twitter, Discord, wherever links are sold to get in, and be sure to join us in the next hour here as I continue on and we see if I finish the rest of this and have that heart attack. Or
can you make it through the Blitz?
Yeah. If I make it through the Blitz and then all of a sudden halfway through the NBA show, set the screen at 1, stuff stops updating, you know what happened, and I'm just keeled over at my desk here.
Yeah, I think the timing line is like 3:42 p.m. over under. I think it's a heavy juiced under.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Although I am moderating the sips here. Like, I will not finish this. That is for sure not happening because I will be sitting here like midway through the day, just absolutely tweaking. But for now, Chris, that is going to do it for us. Again, thank you guys so much for being here with us. Be sure to come and check out Derek Carty and myself in just a few minutes here as Marwell says hi, Chris's dog, who's making a very special guest appearance there as we get a great view into your kitchen. Fantastic looking house, Chris. But for now, we are going to roll out. We'll see you guys next week right back here, same time, same place. And of course, stay tuned. Coming up in just a few minutes here, Derek Carty and some NFL props. Have a great weekend, everybody. And let's cash some tickets. See you in a few.